Thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate what you all do, keeping the story of our community sort of alive and ongoing is a really vital kind of thing. Now, you'll see that I'm a professor of philosophy, not history. And so you might be wondering why it fell to me to do basically a history of the college. If you look at the title there, the Saga of Georgetown College is really the link. So we've been working with a granting agency from Washington, D.C. called NetView, the Network for Vocation and Undergraduate Education. And they sponsor or support programs that have to do with how institutions like Georgetown understand their own calling as an institution. And there was a book a number of years ago about the institutional saga as central to helping institutions survive and thrive. When a college or a university knows its story, people know what to expect of it, how to participate in it, how to extend that story. And so when I took on the grant work, it was to reframe the institutional saga of Georgetown College. Now, I got the grant in 2022. That was before we had the debt paid off. That's when we had the debt. And so when I was formulating the saga of Georgetown College, I really didn't know what the end of the story was going to be. So when I began to think about what are the main points along the way that have brought Georgetown to where it is now in 2022, I began to ask questions, but also put it in the context of a previous historical work. Some of you probably know Bob Snyder. How many of you knew Bob Snyder? Bob Snyder wrote a history of Georgetown College. He was a professor of political science. His history of Georgetown College ended about 1985. And so one of the things I thought would be to pick up the story from Bob Snyder's book and carry it forward. Now, my style, not being a historian or political science person, was to tell the story from what I knew and from the people that I knew. So that's that's a little bit of an introduction. So what I decided was that there were really three most significant events in the time at Georgetown College, and I've been here since 1996. So these were all events that occurred while I was at the college. And so I have these three events: the separation of the college from the Kentucky Baptist Convention. That was already referenced once here. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that. After Bill Crouch left in 2012, we had President Dwayne Green, who came in for 5 years and helped stabilize the college. And then when Dwayne Green left, there was a little bit of a break. Then we got Will Jones as president. He had a short, tumultuous tenure. When he was let go, Rosemary Allen was appointed as acting president, and then later that year named president. They took the acting off. So these are the three events that I think really shaped where the college got to. So let me talk about the separation of the college from the Kentucky Baptist Convention. How many of you are graduates of Georgetown College? How many of you have ever been to a Kentucky Baptist Convention meeting? All right, so we've got some people here who've been to so the KBC was an organization of Baptist churches in Kentucky that actually came about after the founding of Georgetown College. Georgetown was founded in 1829. The KBC came about somewhere, I think, in the 1837. So it was an association of Baptist churches in Kentucky. Now, up until 1942, the Kentucky Baptist Convention didn't have any direct control over the college. But the college needed money in the 1940s because a lot of students were going off to war and their finances declined. And so the college appealed to the convention for some financial support. And the proviso was that the convention would be able to approve the trustees of the college. So the financial connection between the Kentucky Baptist Convention and the college started in the 1940s. It was a mutual kind of thing because Georgetown had been for decades educating most of the ministers in the Baptist churches in Kentucky. So it was a recognition of sort of the uh, the what's the word I'm looking for here? Georgetown was the flagship institution of Kentucky Baptist educational institutions. So it was a big deal when the Kentucky Baptist Convention, uh, uh, there's a little bit about the separation. The 1940s, flagship college. Bill Crouch became president in 1991. Here's the thing that caused a little bit of the disruption. In 2004, the fellow on the left there, Herschel York, was elected as the president of the Kentucky Baptist Convention. And Herschel York was a representative of a very conservative movement within the Southern Baptist Convention, the national organization, that had been pushing that group toward the right. Very conservative, conservative theological views, some other things. Herschel York won that election by 40 votes. It was the most highly attended KBC meeting up to that date. There was 2,200 people at the convention and voting, and the separation was 40 votes, a very thin margin. And Herschel York said, "Yeah, I'm going to follow what the Southern Baptist Convention is telling us to do with this new understanding of what church theology ought to be." A lot of that was driven by the guy on the right there, Al Mohler, who is president at Southern Seminary. So Al Mohler actually hired Herschel York to teach theology at Southern Seminary. So that's the connection there. So basically, this was going to be the Kentucky Baptist Convention and Al Mohler being able to choose who the trustees would be at Georgetown College, right? So you can kind of see a little bit of the problem. At that time, the college was receiving about $1.2 million a year from the Kentucky Baptist Convention, about 5 or 6% of its annual budget. But more important, the Kentucky Baptist Convention supplied the college with a lot of students. We had a lot of students coming from the churches all over the state because Georgetown was the Baptist college to go to. So when Bill Crouch and this group from the college determined that it was time to break our ties with the convention, we knew it would cost at least the $1.2 million that we wouldn't receive from the KBC. We didn't know what it would mean about the students. As it turned out, there was a meeting in Louisville. Guthrie True, who knows Guthrie True here? A couple of you do. Georgetown graduate, a lawyer. Man, you don't want to get into an argument with Guthrie True. He's a litigator, and he really brought his A game, and he convinced the group that had met to decide what the KBC would do in relationship to the college, convinced them to accept the college's proposal to let us go. To let us go, let the college become an independent organization approving its own trustees. The KBC would decline its contribution over 4 years. So they'd give us $600,000 less a year for 4 years, kind of step us down. That was a kind thing to do. So that was the proposal from this organizing committee. But the hurdle was whether or not the convention, all the messengers from the Kentucky churches, if they would agree to it, if the convention would agree to let the college go. It turned out that Herschel York actually was in favor of this. And so he actually helped make the argument to let the college go on its own. That motion passed with 90% approval. So even though it was highly controversial, when it came down to the test at the convention, it was widely and broadly supported. Now, here's the aftermath, right? So we no longer have the financial support of the KBC. We begin to see a decline in enrollment, right? Because now a lot of pastors in those Baptist churches are telling their students not to go to Georgetown. In fact, Herschel York said, I tell my students in his church over there at Buck Run, you should rather go to University of Kentucky. At least they don't pretend to be a Christian school. So there was a little bit of animosity that built up between some Kentucky Baptist churches and Georgetown College. Um, After this, so this was like 2006, and then of course the financial impact of the financial services meltdown, 2008 was really dramatic. We had at this point amassed debt of about $45 million at the college. So we were in a lot of debt. Our enrollment was declining. The financial system was charging us a lot more interest on the debt that we had. It was really not looking very good. On the other hand, there were other things that were changing. The college became more accepting during this time period for students who identified as LGBTQ+. So there's a little mixed bag, right? So let me flash forward to 2012. So we dealt with the decline of enrollment, the financial instability. The faculty didn't have raises for, many faculty and staff didn't have raises for many years. I'm talking like 10. And so there was a lot of disquiet about the direction of the school. And the question that the faculty had was, does Bill Crouch have the leadership skills and knowledge to get us out of this mess with the high debt, declining enrollment? So sometime in the fall of 2012, a group of faculty organized. They shared the sentiment that we needed a change of leadership. They developed a letter that got sent to the chair of the trustees, Earl Good, who's in Indianapolis. And the faculty asked basically, would you consider a change of leadership? Earl Good responded to the faculty and said, to the 27 faculty who sent us the letter, we hear you, we're going to come and meet with you in a week or two. So that's where the 27 came from. It became, one of our students actually created that little logo, the 27 logo, and the student support was really dramatic for this group. The students understood where the college was, and they were supportive of the faculty in asking the trustees for a change of leadership. After the meeting in September, Bill Crouch announced his retirement the following May. So this would have been on October 2nd, 2012, and he was going to retire in May 2013. So there was like a year there. Earl Good is the person. He is the he was at the time, he was the chief of staff for the governor of Indiana. So Earl Good is he's very knowledgeable in higher education. And one of my people I interviewed said that Bill Crouch probably could only have heard that word that he needed to resign from someone like Earl Good. That he needed that kind of that authority. So in the meantime, after Bill Crouch retired, we had our first woman acting president, Grenetta Blevins, who was a Georgetown graduate. She'd also been on the board. She's been chair of the board. She was actually an interim CFO at the college for about 6 months. So she knows the college pretty well. So she was the interim period president until we hired Dwayne Green. Dwayne Green was provost at Campbell University in North Carolina. He had been at that school for a long time. He'd actually been provost for 11 years. Dwayne Green, and I asked him this question. I have an interview in the book if you want to read it. He had a great job. He was most likely going to be the next president at Campbell. And I asked him, why did you come to Georgetown? And he said he'd been getting phone calls from some people that he knew about the college. And he said, Roger, to be honest with you, God was working on me. He said, I knew Georgetown was a fine institution. It's an important institution. And it was in trouble. And I thought maybe I have some of the skills that could help the college survive. So he and his wife came to Georgetown really very selflessly, took on this enormous task. Our accrediting body hit us with a sanction about that time, put us on probation. So we couldn't start new programs. We were limited in what we could do financially. So it kind of made things harder. So he came in thinking it's going to be hard, and then with the SACS probation, it just made it a lot harder. But despite that, he really stuck to it. He downsized the faculty. It was very hard. We reduced the faculty almost by a quarter to cut costs. He was very diligent in what we spent our money on, and actually stabilized the budget of the college for the first time in about 20 years. When it came time for him to think about renewing his contract, he decided he would not renew his 5-year contract because, in his words, what the college needed was someone who could be around 10 years to really accomplish what needed to be done. He didn't have that much time. So he and his wife, Carolyn, left. He actually stayed on another 6 months on a contract basis until they were able to find another person. During that time, Will Jones became president. How many of you knew or met Will Jones at some point? A few of you. Very charismatic, product of Whitley County. A great story. His family were working poor. His father worked in the coal mine. I think neither of his parents had a high school education, but they were convinced that he would go to college. And they kept pestering him about going to college. And he told a story at one point that his community put on a yard sale so that he could have enough money to buy a suit so he could go to college at Berea. So he had the support of his community, went to Berea, got his degree, got into higher education, worked at Berea, worked at Goshen, worked at another school near Atlanta. He was president of a school in Kansas, and Georgetown found him and brought him to Georgetown. The Kentucky connection was really strong. He had some ideas about how to restart the enrollment attraction at Georgetown with the Legacy and Legends scholarship. How many of you know the Legacy and Legends scholarship? A few of you. So anybody who graduated from high school in Scott County and Owen County and Franklin, Casey, 5 counties, they come to the college with almost a full tuition scholarship. So that boosted our enrollment dramatically. Of course, now, if you're not getting tuition dollars, then you need other kinds of funds. So there was something that happened later. But it really hit the news. It got a lot of positive attention. Will Jones was president when COVID hit, and that really hurt. That made things really, really difficult. That was hard for all the schools, but I think it also was really hard on Will Jones himself. He thought he had this trajectory going, and COVID kind of knocked it off, and so he was not very happy. In fall of 21, Will Jones was let go by the college for lots of reasons we can talk about. Maybe some I can't talk about. And in the wake of that radical and rapid change by the trustees, they decided to hire Dr. Allen, who was the provost, to be acting president. Rosemary Allen came to Georgetown in 1984 as a replacement for Steve May for a semester. She was a graduate student at Vanderbilt. And so she came to Georgetown. Then she went back to Vanderbilt. She was working on her PhD. They had another opening. She came back. She worked at the college on and off in a kind of a part-time status for about 4 years. Rosemary Allen, with her degree from Vanderbilt, was recruited to Gonzaga University. They flew her out to Gonzaga, interviewed her for a tenure track position in the English department, and she turned them down. She turned them down because she thought, they're hiring me because I'm a woman. And what they're going to want me to do here is not what I really like to do, which is to teach undergraduates. And so she turned down a tenure track job to stay. She didn't even have the job at Georgetown at that point. Later that year, Frank Ellers, anybody here have Frank Ellers? He retired at mid-year, and Rosemary Allen replaced him. And that's how she came to the college. Um, and then stayed. She was English professor, chair of the English department. 2004, Bill Crouch hired her to be provost. She was provost up until 2021 when Will Jones was let go, and the trustees entrusted the school to her. In January, they made her full president. Here's the thing that Rosemary figured out um, after she was hired as president. When she was provost, she didn't get to see all the books. She could see the academic programs, but she couldn't see the whole college budget. After she was able to see all the books, she realized exactly what bad shape the college was in. In fact, it had, $28.5 million of debt, enrollment troubles, lots of issues. Infrastructure is not doing great here because we haven't had money to spend on it. So a lot of needs, not a lot of promise. And she understood that the main key to the college's survival was eliminating the long-term debt. Now, the long-term debt had really been built by Bill Crouch. Bill Crouch never had a plan to remove the long-term debt. Nobody had had a plan to remove the long-term debt. Dr. Allen was the first person who said, that's the first order of business. So she, and also working with Frank Penn, who all knows Frank Penn? Another trustee, a good friend of the college. They developed a plan to invite contributions to the college against the debt. Now, and she said, who wants to give money to pay off somebody else's debt, right? Because you think they're just going to keep on doing the same thing. But if you could contribute money and know that your contribution would only come due if the college could pay off the entire debt at one time, it'd be a different proposition. And that's what they did. So they began to ask donors for money against the debt on the condition that they could pay off the entire amount. And that's what happened. Now, there's a little bit of an additional story. I don't think I've got that in here, but let me tell it if I've got time. What's the time there, Glenn? 22. Okay, I got a little time. So they had this. So they had been working with the bank in Cincinnati to pay off the debt. They owed $28.5 million. They had been negotiating with the bank that the bank would take $20 million in order to satisfy that whole debt. The bank would rather have $20 million than nothing. They'd worked out this deal. They had raised the $20 million. 2 days before Dr. Allen was going to go to the trustees to say, we have the deal done, the bank calls and says, you know what? We want it all. And so she thought, that's it. We can't raise $8.5 million in 2 days. The college is going to default on its debt. And she began to think, what would it take to unwind the college? As she was thinking this through, she decided to start calling the donors who had pledged their money on the condition that they could pay off the whole debt. And the largest one of those was this guy. I'm forgetting his name. Robert Wilson, there we go. Robert Wilson had been a friend of the college for a long time. And he had pledged $8.5 million to this process. She called him and said, Bob, I'm sorry, we're not going to need your money because the bank is demanding another $8.5 million. And Bob Wilson said, well, I guess I can do that. So he changed his pledge from 8.5 to $16 million. And that's what enabled the college to pay off the $28.5 million debt. Right? There's a plaque there out there by the Giddings. You can see that. They renamed the street for Robert Wilson, of course. What else would you do? What the purpose of this whole project is to kind of help us as a community think about what actions by individuals and communities have gotten us to where we are, What are the things that have made it possible for us to hold together as a college and continue to function? And what we need to do to go forward. How are we going to take these lessons and make good decisions for the future? So one of the things has to do with how we understand ourselves as a Christian college. Of course, through the KBC, that's been a conflict. Herschel York said, at least Kentucky doesn't pretend to be Christian, which means Georgetown is a pretend Christian school. That's always a question. What is the relationship between Georgetown and its Christian understanding? So one of the ways that this project has been helpful is to help us think these things through. So I did a bunch of interviews, and here's the culminating interview with Dr. Allen and Jonathan Sandswise, who is another philosopher. He's now the provost of Georgetown. Rosemary hired him as provost to replace her, and they're talking about the future of the college.
This is a time when we really genuinely do have to figure out what the trajectory for the college is going to be.
What I think makes us unique, sets us apart, and makes me want to keep working here is the sense that we are Christian because we believe that Christ calls us to love and service, that we are called to a radical kind of love, right? Dostoevsky says, love in action is a harsh and terrible thing compared to love in dreams. Love is not just nice. Love is not just easy. Love often means making very difficult kind of decisions to try to genuinely achieve the good. That's what we are trying to do. It's not always just easy and simple. Often that means making complex and difficult kind of decisions.
If we focus on our mission as being a welcoming and challenging educational community, rooting Christian love and service to prepare students to make a positive difference in the world, what we need to do is find good service-focused programs that do prepare students to make a positive difference in the world. That's what a small college, a small Christian college mission should be.
We want to help our students discover a bigger and deeper and wider and more interesting world than the one that they have known. Often it is a question of vision, and love gives us that vision. Love allows us to see that kind of world.
And if we can create that sense of shared mission, of shared commitment to doing something to make the world a better place, in a world that seems to be awfully focused on selfish goals, maybe we can do something to create a little place of light in the midst of a sometimes dark world.
Okay, let me go back to, here we go, hang on. Oh, my computer's slow here, so this this last slide, I'll just leave that up there for a moment. So we do have some products of the grants. One of them is a book that I wrote. Most of the text, Jane got to read an early draft of that. I also had chapters from Karen McKenzie, who was a professor of psychology, and John Hinkle, who is a professor of classics. They both wrote different chapters in here. But I did a lot of interviews, like 45 interviews with people that I could talk to about their role in the college and these decisions. We're also going to have a website when our website's currently under construction. We're going to have a website devoted to the material that backs up basically the book and some other things. And we have a video. It's about an hour and a half long. Ed Smith, who's a professor in theater and film, did the video work, and we did these interviews, and that'll be hopefully ready by the fall. We'll probably roll that out sometime, hopefully around homecoming. So that's my story. Let me see if you've got questions, or what questions do you have? Yeah, please. Tell me your name.
I'm Shauna Kingston, living in the community.
Okay.
My husband is here.
Okay, cool.
So the Legacy Scholarship Program.
Correct.
Did that, or is that, or will that sunset?
It was planned to sunset in 10 years. So it's coming up, I think, in 2 years or so. So there's currently thoughts about how to reform that or how to carry that on in spirit, if not in the same form that it is. So there is some talk about that right now. What do you think?
Well, I've often wondered how the college accommodated
Yeah.
the lack of tuition.
Yeah, it's been hard, right? But it did bring people, so we made some money in fees, right? And we did have people in our dorms, and it populated the school, so it felt like there was a lot more students around. Some of these students from Scott County, especially that I know, who would have gone to different schools, actually did really, really well at Georgetown. So it enabled us to attract some students I think we otherwise wouldn't have had a chance to. Um, but it is very costly. I think that's a conversation that they're having right now.
And I'm also curious about your enrollment
Mhm.
fluctuations. What's
Right.
the range been?
So I think in the high point in my experience, and I think this looking back over the history, I think there have been times when the school was up to 1,400 students. Um, the more robust years I experienced were in the 1,300s. Um, most recently, we've been about 1,100. So I think we're kind of thinking 11, 1,200 is probably going to be our stable spot. Yeah. Thank you. Good question. Yes, please.
Louis Wolf. I'm a neighbor of the
Yeah,
college.
yeah.
Walk through campus 2 or 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Since the payoff of the long-term or the
Yeah.
long-term debt going forward, I think a lot of the community has wondered when we would see the infrastructure of the college
Yep.
benefit from
Yep.
that.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
I walk around
Mhm.
2 or 3 times a day.
Yep.
Lights are still burnt out.
Yep. Yep. So as you can imagine, in a cash-strapped institution, most of the attention for maintenance has been on band-aids, fixing what you have to fix, right? Only in the last year or so, since the debt's been paid off, and we changed banks. One of the things I didn't tell you about the bank, so PNC had our loan, but they wouldn't allow us any short-term credit. So we couldn't even borrow money to help pay off anything, like run the school, because they had the lien on the college. Only after we got that resolved was the college able to have a new organization, a new banking relationship. We do have credit available, but you can imagine the administration's pretty careful about thinking what they're going to spend money on. So there are some longer term plans about reshaping the infrastructure, and they want to do that very carefully and very strategically. They did, of course, they refurbished the gym. That was some grants, so that was really nice. Um, they're thinking there are different plans to redo our heating and cooling. That was basically a post World War II system that has never been replaced. So there's a lot of upgrades that you wouldn't see that we have to do before we can start doing like the buildings and things you will see. So that's sort of the plan right now.
You know what the current status is of Night Hall?
The current status of Night Hall, and Jane maybe has a little more current information than I do. I think they are close to having the total amount they need to refurbish that building. There are some plans to extend it a little bit and maybe upgrade it. And at some point, hopefully, use that building to house a majority of our students because it's pretty large. So they're going to redo it. They're not going to take it down because it's just a really good building. And I think they're maybe a year or two away from actually starting to work on that. But they'll do Night Hall before they start working on Anderson Hall. So that's from what I've heard, that's the plan. Is that fair? Okay, cool. Good
We
question.
were kind of hoping to start work this fall and then decided it would be best. We're really careful about getting debt. We're trying to get our money
Yeah.
lined up so that we can.
So all the money will be in hand before they start working on it.
I was thinking a third party was
There's a third party who kind of does that. And it will be an addition to the land. But the good good thing about my hall is it's the perfect setup. College kids coming in because it has the wide halls,
Mhm.
common halls, rooms across the
Yeah.
and it adds to the community. Whereas they're the ones that are all
Yeah, little hole.
blocked
Yeah.
off from each other. It doesn't feel community.
How many of you stayed in Night Hall? My daughter's first year was in Night Hall. She loved it. Yeah. Yep. Yes.
Ken Hale.
Yep.
Class of 1969.
Huh.
Just a point of clarification, the debt was being handled by PNC. I thought it was.
I'm sorry, Fifth Third. My bad.
Just-
Right, Fifth Third. Yep. PNC is my name. Fifth Third.
Now
Yep.
it's not that.
Now it's Stockyard Bank. Yep. Other questions? Margaret, please.
Under, the things that are planned ahead now in terms of academics.
Mhm.
And,
Sure.
President Allen was talking, some of them talking about.
Right.
Things that would bring into the
Right.
community
Right.
as service. What are
So, for example, we're going to start in the fall a program that is for counseling, or a master's in counseling related like drug addiction. So we can use our current psychology staff, make a couple additions, and be able to offer a master's program. Another program that they're working on is an RN to BS. So people who have a registered nurse degree, they don't have a Bachelor of Science to go with it, they'll be able to complete their BS degree already having an RN. There is an adult online program now for completion. So people who've been out of school, have an associate's degree, if they want to come back and get a BA or a BS, they can go online and take classes through the college to achieve that degree. Yeah. So those are just several, but you can see the kind of the direction they're going with new programs are these kinds of these, like nursing. I think nursing is going to be in the mix at some point, maybe physical therapy. Yes, please.
And my question was very much related to that, how the philosophy that
Mhm.
was expressed by the president
Yep.
was impacting program offerings.
Correct. Yep.
It's much easier to open a program than to close.
Right. Right.
So what's the thinking around that?
Yeah. So of course, we have pretty well established majors, that have been successful. Our pre-med program is really good. Our pre-nursing program gets a lot of students. We also have a lot of students who come for preparation for law school. So we know a lot of students come for those kinds of degrees. So those programs are going to be maintained. What we're going to add are the programs like the RN to BS program, the adult online, things that complement what we already have, but extend it in some other kind of way. Yes.
I think there's also an agreement with BCPC for the associate degree students to come here and not necessarily that certifications
Mhm.
where you're not even necessarily working for a specific degree,
Right.
but certification courses in school that will be nice,
Mhm.
shorter time.
Yeah. Yes, please.
That may be changing. Are you still offering the classes?
We have not. Yeah, we did that. Boy, I did that. Oh man, I remember going back to Stott County. Gosh, that was in 2003 or 4. I don't think we've been doing those high school.
It saved my son.
Did it really?
Honestly,
Yeah.
when he was
Yeah.
a senior, he was so.
We didn't
over
fund, the
kid.
college didn't fund that. I think that was
No,
state
we had
funded.
to pay for his
Yeah,
parents,
yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
he wanted to take some sort of an engineering
Yeah.
class at UK,
Yeah.
but he said, nope, your only option is to come to
Yeah.
Georgetown College and whatever they offer at the lunchtime
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
So it was ethics
Oh,
and philosophy.
right,
So
right.
we have actually
Yeah.
had you at that point.
Yeah.
But he was so done with the immaturity of the kids at the high school.
Right,
It was
right.
so nice for him to be able to come here
Yeah.
and take those classes in his
Right.
senior year. And then when he went to Berea, at the very end, we needed those two classes to make sure
graduate.
he could graduate.
That's great.
on time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a win-win.
Yeah. I think it's a great intro. It's a good way to get the community to know the college and know the campus. Cool. Yes, please.
I have a neighbor, she's 15 years old, she goes to school here.
Mhm.
She's a homeschooled kid.
Yep.
A very good student. Are you all thinking of trying to increase the accessibility of these college courses? She took one last semester.
Yep.
She just finished another semester. She wants to take 2 or 3 classes next year.
Yeah. So just for a check, Jonathan Sandswise, he's homeschooled. They homeschool their daughters, so they know the homeschool network. They've been very interested in incorporating homeschool folks into college offerings. So there's definitely an outreach in that direction. So I think that's, yeah, I remember a student back in like 2006 who was homeschooled, who came into the college at 16 or 17 years old, and she was just fantastic. So I know that we've had experience with homeschool students.
Yeah, this one I'm talking
Yep.
about is a very good student.
Yep.
She's trying to get a driver's license. She's only
Yep.
15 years
Yep.
old.
Yep. Excellent. I can take one more question because I have a meeting on Zoom at 7 o'clock. Yes, please.
Not a question
Yeah.
particularly, but I think something we ought to mention is sports.
Yeah, sports is a big part of the. Yeah, I talk about sports a big chunk. Yeah. Our sports programs kept the school alive, especially 2008 and 9, and then again during COVID. So it was the sports programs that brought students in. They were able to fill beds better than other ways we could get students. I think slightly more than 50% of our current student body are in the athletic program. So we have a lot of athletes. And what I found is that those athletes are really pretty well disciplined. We have women's wrestling, and you want to get a smart group of kids together, get some women wrestlers. Boy, they're really smart. The guys, yeah, maybe not so much, but the women are another top flight. Thank you. Other questions?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.